Hello and welcome to SpeedTrack Consulting's in-depth view of the Silver Surfer turbocharger that has been out for a number of years. And as always, as we go through our particular review, we go through our 6 points, which is engine size application, purpose of the turbocharger, power level and characteristics, composition, specifications, and of course everyone's favorite, price. Engine size applications are for those that want to be able to use a broad power band and has about 1.8 to about 3 liters of displacement in a single application, and all the way up from 3 liters to about 7.0 liters in a twin turbo application, and can make a very good range of power, especially if the cylinder head has been well machined and developed. The purpose of the turbocharger is, of course, to be able to have a compact size with a good mid-range of power, very similar to the GT3076R, without the high price tag and the requirement of having water lines to be able to utilize with it. It's also been designed to be able to fit with a variety of engine bays in which space is going to be of the utmost importance, and still want to be able to have the ability to make over 400 wheel horsepower. It's also designed to be able to work with other T3, TO4E, and TO4B kits that use the same 2.5-inch T31 4-bolt flange. The power level and characteristics of this turbo actually is very similar to the GT3076R, in which it has an effective boost pressure range from 14 psi up to about 27 to 28 psi boost pressure. Anything below that is actually going to not show much of the characteristics any different than your standard universal Garrett turbo applications. But once you reach past that 14 psi point, just like with the GTR series, you're going to see a change in response. It's going to be extremely responsive, good with high pressure, and still be able to make top-end power at the same time. The effective power level for each application in a single unit is about 300 to 540 wheel horsepower at its maximum. Let's look at the composition of the turbochargers themselves. As you can see here, both of these are using high treated ceramic coatings. The one on your left, of course, here is using a high polish compressor cover, which is used for an additional charge. And the black one over here has been the more popular version, in which this is a powder coated compressor cover with a high temp black coating of the turbine side. But there's going to be some variations between the two models, so we need to be able to take a look at them effectively. The first is the fact, we'll move this one over here, is the fact that with this particular composition, this turbo uses the water lines that are an option. It's not a requirement, which is different from the GTR series. It uses a 1/8 NPT oil feed fitting in the wet cartridge and uses 3/8 NPT to -6 AN water lines to be able to fit water. This is for those that want to be able to either have the extra protection of water that do not have a turbo timer, or that they're changing the use of the application from that of a street use to more of one of high endurance, such as a road race or circuit application. The great part is that nothing dissipates heat from the turbine housing like water. I know that there are some air-cooled models that are available out to the public. We've found really that water is a great chemical agent, or ethyl glycol, whichever you want to be able to use, to be able to extract that heat that's going to be sitting within the turbine housing, especially when the engine is shut off, and be able to, which usually transfers into the cartridge, and be able to dissipate a lot of that heat, making the journal bearings and the shaft actually less prone to any oil coking or any other disabling kind of features. This uses a billet back plate for the compressor cover, and as I said, this uses a standard T3, T4 return flange for those that have your run-of-the-mill T3, T4 universal kit. This is a great replacement. We use this actual compressor cover because of the fact that now we're looking at a more compact size to be able to fit with these tight engine bays without needing to notch the block or do any other kind of modifications necessarily as one would with a standard T3 TO4E version. But this isn't just really the features of it, more than anything else. What we do typically here is we're able to have what we call better turbo matching. This is the ability to be able to have a better idea in terms of what matching should be used to get the most effective power. One has to be able to balance these types of wheels in order to be able to get a mixture of high-end power and torque, and at the same time be able to have the turbocharger to be responsive based upon the size of the engine displacement that's being used. So for example, in something like this, if you notice, we have our Silver Surfer right here in the same TO4B back plate system. Typically what you want to be able to do is have a 30% balance ratio between the size of the compressor wheel and the size of the exhaust wheel, so that you can have a great combination of power and torque and still be able to have it to be responsive. What many people unfortunately tend to do is they'll get a large compressor wheel and match it to a very small exhaust wheel. What happens is you get a combination of results that may be mediocre in nature. So in that particular case, with too large of a compressor wheel and too small of an exhaust wheel, you get a bit of high-end power, but you don't get the same responsiveness in spool up or torque or anything like that as you would expect. At the same time, you also don't want to go into the opposite direction where you have too large of an exhaust wheel and too small of a compressor wheel. That type of combination is used for, say, a diesel application, something that doesn't have very high engine speeds, or say like a truck or tractor, in which torque is going to be more important than actual power. And what happens is you set something that's too large of an exhaust wheel to too small of a compressor wheel in a high speed, engine's piston speed, gasoline application, is now you get a lot of torque up front. But unfortunately, it can't carry any horsepower into the upper RPM range. And so that next thing you know, you're going to have even worse response before. It'll be quick to be able to move very, very easily, but it won't be able to take any kind of high-end upper-end power. The Holstead series of turbochargers, the HX series and HY series specifically, were one of the few truck and rig applications that was actually able to consider within its design gasoline applications in terms of higher piston speeds and high exhaust energy speeds. So they're one of the few series that's able to come from the OEM that's able to work well with a lot of gasoline applications. But better turbo matching is going to be more important. Better exhaust wheel, better compressor wheel matching is going to be more important than just being lucky that first time out. This is, as I said, is a dry cartridge of the Silver Surfer, and which no water lines are being used here. And this uses 1/4 NPT as opposed to the 1/8 that's typically used on those that have the water lines. Well, let's look one more thing at this, the idea of composition. The other thing that people want to tend to do is we put this specifically in a T31 2.5 inch 4-bolt application. Okay, so we use just large enough size of the exhaust wheel to be able to have that combination of higher torque and still have the ability to take rotational speeds for higher end power. But we also want to make sure that we put this in the correct size volute. So this .63 AR here has been machined out to be able to accept a slightly larger wheel and still be able in a smaller volute. A lot of people believe that just changing to a .82 AR may be the most effective way to be able to change characteristics, but we found that's really not the case. It only changes it to where the power level comes to the upper RPM band, but not still be able to have the same responsiveness as before. Some people think that a few hundred RPMs makes all the difference in the world. We tend to think that it does, and would rather be able to keep it in a small compact housing as reasonably possible without going too small, because then the exhaust wheel could really overspeed and be overwhelmed. In addition to be able to have in a 4-bolt application, is we have the ability also to be able to put this in a 5-bolt forged style housing. Okay, in the same AR. This is for those that have a particular exhaust manifold that sets a turbo in a particular manner, or that wants to be able to convert themselves back to internal wastegate application. This is the Ford style, SVO style, and it is an additional charge to be able to have this one on because of the difference in nickel iron content than the 4-bolt. Well, now that we've kind of looked at that composition, let's look at this as a whole. Specifications. Specifications for this turbocharger really are a T3TO4B compressor cover using a 58 pound per minute compressor wheel. This is another dry cartridge, and of course a 638R 2.5 inch T31 exhaust wheel. This is effectively about $900 for the basic unit. That does not come with any coatings or any polishings whatsoever. And then the particular coatings and polishings are an additional charge. To get a full quote on that type of thing for this particular turbo, let's go ahead and give us an email at speedtrackconsulting@yahoo.com, and they'll be able to give you the varying options and price and availability, because sometimes they are subject to change just due to demand and the way that Garrett does things. Lastly, this is a full Garrett unit, which makes it rebuildable, reusable, and reliable. This means that your authorized Garrett dealer is able to make repairs to this particular turbocharger in case something is able to go wrong. This is 360-degree bearing system that's used, and that's bolted in as opposed to using a spring load system. So it's going to be able to take the higher thrust loads that a lot of people are going to be using this particular turbo for. We also found really that because of the fact of its compact size, those with smaller cramped engine bays really going to have an easier time integrating this system than, say, something larger. And we really found that this is the key system in terms of being able to get 400 wheel horsepower in a very responsive system under $1,000 without having to do a lot of modifications to any engine bays, be it a 4-cylinder or an 8 or even a 10-cylinder application. I like this turbocharger because of the fact that it's extremely effective. It's effective in terms of its use from a GT3076R, even though it's not exactly the same, and still being able to be rebuildable in case something goes wrong and not having to worry about a core exchange program. Well, that looks at our look at the Silver Surfer Turbo. Give us an email again at speedtrackconsulting@yahoo.com, and as always, happy boosting and take care.